Welcome back. In this session, we are going to bring everything together and we are going to process all the 4 files at the same time via that one pipeline using a trigger. So in order to do that, I've created another configuration file, and this is a JSON file with the 4 files we want to process. And I've also added the source base URL, as you can see, so that actually we can deal with the differences between the country response data, which comes from this URL, and the others comes from the open data URL. So let's upload this file first into our Azure storage account. So let me bring up the Explorer, and we want to put the file into here. So that'll be okay. So we want to upload this ECDC all files list.json file. So let's click open and upload. So while that's uploading, let's switch over to our data factory and start making the changes. So we want to make the changes into our main pipeline now. And the first thing we want to do is to point the linked service to the new config file which we just uploaded, as this file has reference of our data. Next, we will create a new pipeline called PL to ingest all files. Next, search for lookup activities into the activities search box. Drag the lookup activity to canvas. Give this a name, lookup all files, as we are going to iterate all the files using the config file. Select the dataset DSECDC file list dynamic from the drop-down, and make sure to uncheck first row only checkbox. And the next thing we want to do is to create our for each activity. So that is here. So let's drag that in. And that has to be dependent on the lookup activity. And we are going to call this as loop all the lookup value. Next, connect lookup activity with for each. So that for each dependence on lookup output. Next, click on the settings. And now we want to define the item. So as we know from before, we need to get the lookup activities output and then .value, because that's the one which would contain our values. And click OK. And we can do them sequentially or in parallel, it doesn't really matter. Next, we will go to for each activities tab and add copy activity inside for each. So that for each will read all the data for config file which is coming through lookup. Once you drag the copy data activity into the canvas, give a name called copy all ECDC data. Now specify the source and sync config. Select DSECDC raw CSV HTTP from the drop-down and provide the dynamic value for relative URL. You can specify the current item using an item function and then press to select the source relative URL which is coming from JSON file. Let me show that. As you see here, we have 3 properties. And that is what we are referring into our item expression. Two properties of JSON we have used for source input, and third one we will specify for sync. Now let's validate it. Validation is successful. So that means we are good to go for debug. Let's click on debug for execution. Execution started and it is showing in progress. So let's wait to get it completed. But you will notice that it is created for copy activity, as we have 4 entry into our JSON file, and that is why we are getting 4 entry of copy all ECDC data over here. Congratulations! Execution is successful. Let's jump to Azure Storage Explorer to validate it. Our data is residing in ECDC folder within raw container. So navigate to ECDC. And you notice here we got all the 4 file which was in our GitHub now ingested into our data lake for further processing. Let's jump into Azure Data Factory and publish our changes. This is what I want to demonstrate you in this session. So on this note, I am stopping over here. See you in the next session.